Hey, grab your Bibles if you would and turn to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 2. And we're going to start a series, and it's called The Gifts at Christmas. I love gifts. I don't know if you guys love gifts. I don't know if you're the kind of person, I don't know how you open a gift. Do you just rip it right open, or are you one that kind of tries to preserve the paper? If you try to preserve the paper, would you just raise your hand up for a moment? Okay, so there's a few of you here. I'm sorry about that. You miss out on a little bit of the joy of really the whole point of gifts. But when you look at Christmas and you think of gifts, and what we're going to talk about this month is really the idea and the truth that God sent the greatest gift to us in Jesus, right? So Matthew 2 begins this little bit of a journey. So let me ask you this question before we jump into that. I don't know if you ever dream of winning the lottery. I imagine at some point you've thought about it, even if you don't play the lottery. Now, I'm not encouraging you to play the lottery. That's not what I'm doing. But if you ever dream of the lottery, right? So what would you do if you won $240 million? Some of you are like, oh, we could really do some great work in Haiti, I'm pretty sure, with Pastor Yvonne with $240 million. Now, let me ask you a question a different way. What would you do if you lost $240 million? What if you had it in your bank account, or you had it in Bitcoin? Right? So I don't know if you've heard these stories, but there's a guy named Stephen Thomas. I don't know if you ever heard of that name. But he had $220 million of Bitcoin, and he couldn't log into his account. He couldn't figure out the password. And he gets 12 attempts to sign in, and he's thinking of everything that he can think of to do it, and he can't figure it out. And he goes through this process after he lost $220 million. And he's beginning to realize that he may never have access to that $220 million. And he begins to wonder about his identity. And he begins to question and wonder about his self-worth. And he really wrestles with it in those ways. There's another gentleman, his name is James Howell, and I don't know if you've heard of James, but James Howell had the same problem. The only solution that he had was he only had $140 million in Bitcoin, and he had thrown away the hard drive in the dump. He was offering, this is over in England, I believe, and he was offering the city half of the amount of money if they would help him dig through the dump and find his hard drive. That hard drive that for him before was totally meaningless. But then he realized that his login credentials to Bitcoin were on it. And that hard drive all of a sudden became very valuable to the point where he's willing to give away half of the money if they are able to find this in the dump. The interesting thing about these stories when you realize it is it all boils down to worth. It all boils down to where do you find and where do you place value? Where do you place value? And we may place value right now. We may place value in a house. We may place value in cars, right? I mean, you look around. I was talking to my wife yesterday. I'd watched football. Go Blue. Sorry, just threw that out there. I almost wore my jersey, but I felt like I needed to represent the Christmas season a little bit, so I wore my Christmas. But anyway, wanted to get that out there. I'm a fair weather fan, I want to be honest. But anyway, you think about where you place value, and I was watching football yesterday, and this commercial comes on for the new, have you seen this commercial for the new Jeep Grand Wagoneer? And have you just kind of gone like that? I did. And then I looked it up last night. $115,000 for this car. Woo! Some of you might be driving it, so value. What has value in your life? What do you consider to have value? One of the most frustrating things as parents around Christmas time is when you buy a gift for your kid and then they open it and they don't want it, right? And they carry on about it. They don't see any value. And you may have spent even hundreds of dollars on that gift and they're like, I don't really want that gift. That's not what I wanted. It's frustrating. And as we grow up, we place value on different things, right? The question that I want to ask you this morning is, what's the value that you're placing on Christ? What's the value you're placing on Christ? Matthew chapter 2 introduces us to the wise men as part of the Christmas story, and you might think there's three of them, and there may very well be three of them that show up. I don't know exactly how many there are. And there's different guys who think different things. There's three gifts. But they had determined value. So let's read this for a moment. Matthew chapter 2, and we're just going to go through verses 1 through 12 this morning as we talk about it. And here we go. Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod, who was a nasty individual, by the way, if you read enough about him. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the newborn king? Where is the newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star as it rose, and we have come to worship him." Woo, that's awesome when you think about it. I started reading this, and I've read 7 or 8 different commentaries this week, and I started just really leaning into this moment of what's going on here. So the wise men, the magi as they were somewhat highly regarded in the culture, right? And they were considered to be maybe even powerful, but if not powerful, they were definitely considered to be influential. And these influential men, what had happened was they saw a star in the sky, and they had determined, because they had heard enough teaching through the years, because that's part of it, they're very learned men. They knew a lot. They're very intelligent. And so when they saw the star in the sky, and what you begin to see is they recognized that that star had significance. And so as they see the star in the sky, they determine, right, that there's worth and there's value in beginning to chase that star. And they didn't know exactly where that star was going to lead them, but they had decided in their life, in that moment of history, that they were going to chase after that star because of what it was going to do and where it was going to lead them. And so one of the first things that I just want to throw out there to you is just simply this, right? I want you to be a star chaser, not a stargazer. And here's what I mean by that. There's a lot of us, and a lot of us are in this room, and we're stargazers. And what I mean by that is you're going to see the star in the sky, because here's the reality. The same star that these wise men chased after, and then they got to worship and be at the feet of Jesus. And he was probably maybe a year old. It wasn't like baby Jesus, but probably a year old. At the most, he was probably 2. But because they chased after the star, they got a chance to encounter Jesus in a way that nobody else, or very few people, got to encounter Jesus that way. But it was the same star that everybody else saw, and they're just gazing at it like, that's a really cool star that showed up in the sky. And it's really awesome. And so they would just watch it. And who knows how long this went on. This could have gone on for weeks or months even. And the same star appears. And that star would have led people to Jesus. But instead of chasing after the star, they chose to just sit and gaze. And churches today are filled with people who are gazing at the star. And Jesus is at the other end of the star, and he's going, I'm not just here to look at. I'm not just a pretty face. But we sit there, nonetheless, kind of arms crossed kind of deal, right? Looking up, thinking how marvelous that is. And Jesus is inviting you, going, come on, I've got something so much better in store for you than just to sit and gaze at the star. If you'll chase after the star, you're going to encounter Jesus in a way that you never would have thought possible, because at some point, you as a star chaser, right, are going to collide with the star maker. And your life will never be the same. And I'll give you an example. That's part of my story. And it's not just stepping into ministry. Man, it's stepping off of a plane in Haiti for the very first time. And taking a 4-hour ride, right, to his place. And this collision happens. And my life has never been the same. And some of you are sitting on the sidelines today and you're gazing at a star, and Jesus is inviting you, chase the star and you're going to collide with me, and your life will forever be changed. And that's what happens with the wise men in Matthew chapter 2. So be a star chaser, not a stargazer. Let's go on, verse 3. King Herod was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. Herod, by the way, just throw this out there. If anybody threatened Herod, he would kill him. Like, that's the kind of dude he was. And he was, some would speculate he's probably around, he's in his 70s at this point. Some people would speculate as how old he is. And so you can imagine, for somebody that's been in that position for a while, he's probably had a lot of people killed. Right? He's had a lot of people killed. And here's what happens. He was deeply disturbed, as was everyone in Jerusalem. Can you imagine? Why are they disturbed? Because they're realizing that these guys show up and they've missed something. So he called a meeting of the leading priests and teachers of religious law and asked, where's the Messiah supposed to be born? In Bethlehem in Judea, they said, for this is what the prophet wrote. So all of these people knew. Jewish people knew that Jesus, the Messiah, was supposed to be born. And if they had just paid attention. And you see, now it's not the Jewish people who knew, it's church people who know. And a lot of church people know, and they've been told, and they've been taught, and they've done Bible studies, and they've dug in, and they've highlighted things in their Bible. They've done all of those things, but they're still missing Jesus. Because they're gazing at it instead of chasing after him. And you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, verse 6, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah, for a ruler will come for you who will be the shepherd for my people. When Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men, he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Then he told them, go to Bethlehem and search carefully for the child. And when you find him, come back and tell me so I can go and worship him too. Right. This guy that had killed anybody who threatened his throne is going to go worship baby Jesus. Yeah, we believe that. Verse 9, after this interview, the wise men went their way, and the star they had seen in the east guided them to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with his mother, Mary. And they bowed down and worshiped him. Just him. The star maker. They worshiped. I don't know exactly what that may have looked like, right? I mean, maybe they sang some songs. They may have. Maybe they prayed. Maybe they celebrated. But here's what we do know, is then they opened their treasure chests. I don't know who travels with their treasure chests. I don't really know people that travel with treasure chests, do you? But these guys did. Because they not only were influential, but they were wealthy. And so they're traveling, and they're not just traveling. If there are three of them, and I'm not saying there are three of them, but if there are only three of them, there's not just three people in the traveling party. There's potentially hundreds of people in the traveling party with the wise men. And as they enter into this place, these men of influence, these men of wisdom and intelligence, they encounter Jesus and their life is changed. And they bow down in worship because they had determined the worth of that child right before them. And by the way, he's priceless, right? I mean, think of those commercials that are out there, the value of this, the value of that. It's priceless. Jesus, right there, in this home, as a child, encountered by the wise men, and they open the treasure chest, and they offer him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold. I don't know if you invest in gold, but it's been determined to be valuable for a very long time. I mean, wars have been fought over it. Remember, even as our country in its early days, and you hear of the gold rush in California, right? And you hear and you study those things. If somebody hears that there's gold somewhere, they want to show up there because gold has tremendous value. And these wise men, I don't know what that treasure chest looked like, but they opened up the treasure chest and they offer, the first thing it says that they offer is gold. Something of really significant value. And they offer it to Jesus. Like, here is gold. And they go through frankincense and myrrh. And we're going to talk about them in the coming weeks. But right now it's just about gold. It's just looking at it and realizing what are you willing to offer, right? What do you have of value that you're going to decide that Jesus is more valuable than that? Because a lot of us, we have things that are we've determined to be valuable, but we're not willing to open the treasure chest, right? Because it's our treasure chest, and so we're not going to open it. We're just going to keep it closed. In fact, we would really prefer that it be locked. And it would be okay with us if for a season we lost the key, so nobody was able to get into the treasure chest of things that we determined to be valuable. But listen, as a star chaser, when you collide with the star maker, right, it's going to cause you to open up your treasure chest and be able to say, okay, this is what I have, and what am I willing to offer to Jesus? You see, if you're a stargazer, if you're somebody who's just going to sit there and you're going to be on the sidelines and you're going to go, that's pretty, that's nice, that's sort of all you're going to get. But if you want your life to collide with the one who created everything, it means that at some point you're going to have to open the treasure chest. And you're going to have to take what you think is valuable, and you're going to have to offer it, right? So some would even say what they believe happened is, because it's not really long after this in the Gospel of Matthew, that they moved to Egypt. And some speculate, we don't know this for sure, but some speculate that Mary and Joseph were able to take the gifts from the wise men, and then they were able to sell them in order to finance their trip, because they're not wealthy people. Mary and Joseph are not wealthy. They don't have money. And so when they showed up and there's no room in the inn, it's not like they can go knocking around because they've got tons of money and they can go stay wherever they want to stay. I mean, they're very humble circumstances. And so when the kings or wise men show up and they offer these gifts and they open that treasure chest, you could imagine someone being of humble circumstances. And if you showed up at their house with that brand new Jeep Wagoneer, Grand Wagoneer, right? Fully loaded, decked out, I prefer black, that kind of thing, going on. And it's like, here. And that person's probably going to go, for me? What are you willing to do when you encounter Jesus? What worth and value are you willing to place on him? You see, you think about it, you think about all of our lives and all of the excuses that people make, right? We all make excuses. I'm too busy. That's one excuse, isn't it? So we've determined, we've placed value on our time because we're all given 168 hours a week. And you're going to fill those 168 hours with certain things. Everybody's got to sleep. And you might require a little more beauty rest than the other people. And so maybe, you've got to get that full 8 hours every night, whereas somebody else might only need, 5 or 6. I don't know. You place value on that. But then what about the rest of the time that you have? What are you filling that time with, right? Because that's really, you begin to see the things that you value are those things that you're investing time in, right? The things that you value are the things, it was the old adage as I was growing up, it was like, show me the ledger in your checkbook, right? And I'll show you the things that you value. And so, a lot of us value, we value eating out at decent restaurants, and we value this thing and that thing, and we value going to Best Buy or Amazon shopping or whatever. And those are the things that we've determined that we place value on because those are the things that we're spending our money and resources on. And what really winds up happening, and this is one of the great challenges that all of us face, is we just try to give God leftovers. Leftover time, leftover finances, leftover energy, leftover this and leftover that, because our lives have become so consumed by everything else. And what really winds up happening is we're all sitting back and we're becoming stargazers. And Jesus is going, no, I want you to chase after me. And you might want to argue a little bit, but let me just remind you that even in the book of Jeremiah says, if you will seek me with all of your heart, then you will find me. And we've stopped doing that because we're too tired. We don't have enough money, those types of things. And so when it comes to the moments like today, right, we're here, we're gathered together, that song, Behold Him, let's just throw it out there. It really should make us want to open our treasure chest. And what can I give? What can I offer? Because as I'm singing that, as I'm reading the scriptures, as I'm just witnessing what the wise men went through and what they did as they encountered Herod, and then they show up with Jesus, and it's like, here's this child. They're not Jewish people, by the way, but they knew enough about Jewish history. That's what they had determined, and they chased the star, and it led them to Jesus, and here they are. And they open the treasure chest, and they offer gold and frankincense and myrrh, and gold represents that idea of royalty. Right? Here it is. Matthew, as he writes, he wants to write to a Jewish audience, and he's going to present Jesus as a king. He's the promised coming king, the king of the Jews. And so, of course, the first gift that they offer is going to be gold, representing his royalty. So not only is there just all of the things that are happening, but then there's the declaration of saying, this is who we've determined Jesus to be. He's royalty. He's a king, which, by the way, is why in the next coming pages, Herod tries to have all of the children killed. Because he's threatened once again that somebody's going to rise up and take his throne and his power away from him. And so he decides he's going to do what he's done in the past, and he's going to kill the person that would be in opposition to him. Gold, because Jesus has value. Gold, because he is worthy. He is worthy. So, a couple of things. I'm not a bullet point person, I've told you that. So I put some of these things together for you guys that are. You got to be the fill. And who's a fill in the blank? Just you love filling in the blanks. It's like, these are for you. Here it is. Star chasers. Star chasers determine that Jesus is worth it. They just determined. So right here, right now, this moment, 2021, your life can collide with the King of the universe. And I don't know what that means for everybody. I know for me, it's just been about saying yes to the opportunities that are in front of me. There's a book I listened to this year. I didn't read it. I listened to it. It's called Divine Collision. And the guy's talking about, he's a believer, and he winds up, helping, I think it's in Uganda. He stood on the southern tip of Europe one day, and he sees Africa, and he's like, I'm never going to go there. And then God took him there. Like, he said it in a way like, this is as close as I ever want to get. And then he goes there, because as he said yes to Jesus, there was this collision that took place in his life. And when you determine that Jesus is worth it, one of the things that you're going to learn is that you're going to say yes to Jesus. I'm going to tell you, there's no greater thing than just saying yes to Jesus. If it's just the beginning, and maybe your yes today is that you want to choose to believe in and follow him, and you're just going to say yes to Jesus, and that's it. Boom, that's the best decision you'll ever make in your life. But if you're in the room and you've been believing and following Jesus for a long time, it's time for you to take your yes up a little bit. And maybe it is like, hey, I'm just going to say yes, and I'm going to open up the treasure chest, and our goal for the Christmas offering is $40,000, and maybe you're going to give towards that, and that's going to be your yes. Maybe your yes is going to be that you're going to go to Ecuador next year, or Costa Rica next year, or Romania. And you're going to say yes. And as you do that, here's the thing, your life will be changed because you said yes, because it collided with what God's doing in other parts of the world. And that is something really incredible to see. And you're just going to determine that he's worth it. And you don't have to, like, you might not be willing to say yes because you don't have all of the answers figured out right now. And you just have to become okay with that and just say, I'm just going to say yes because Jesus is worth it. And I'm going to let him sort out the details. And that's even more fun, by the way, is to watch him sort out the details. So star chasers, if you're going to chase after the star and your life is going to collide with the star maker, then you've got to determine that Jesus is worth it. He's worth this. 3 things. He's worth the journey. He's worth the journey. These wise men came from the east. I don't know how far it was, but they came from the east. They've made the journey. They show up in Jerusalem. They're talking to Herod. They're going to go to Bethlehem, which isn't that far away, 5 to 7 miles away from Jerusalem is what they say. It's not easy, though. It's not like hopping in the Jeep Grand Wagoneer, luxury edition in black with a sunroof, kind of thing. Like, that's not what it is. It's a rough, very difficult, challenging journey that they're on, but they determine that he's worth it. And whatever journey you find yourself on as you follow Jesus, here's the thing, it's worth it. It's worth it. The journey is worth it. The yes is worth it. Getting to Ecuador is worth it. Even if you want to go to Haiti, let's get in a boat. I'll go with you. Like, we can go because we can get to where he is without having to go through Port-au-Prince, which is where all the rough stuff is. It's worth it. I'm telling you, the journey is so worth it. I tell you what, when I first went, the second time I went, Pastor Yvonne, I shared with you a few weeks ago, like, physically, I'm a mess. I mean, I'm up here about to pass out because I can't breathe. But even beyond that, my back, and we get on that school bus. Remember the second time? The second time I went, you drive 3 hours north, basically, from Port-au-Prince, and it's all highway stuff, and it's not bad, other than the bus driver and, him weaving in and out of traffic, and that's kind of crazy. But going up the mountain, or the hill, because Haiti is the land of hills, you're going an hour up and in a bus like that. I finally had to just kind of stand up because I just couldn't sit anymore with my back. I just couldn't sit anymore. But the journey was worth it to see those pastors as they showed up to that pastors' conference, hungry for what God had for them in that moment. The journey is worth it. Number 2, it's worth the sacrifice. It's worth the sacrifice. It so is worth it. You open up the treasure chest, and if it's, yes, here's my gold, here's my silver, here's my frankincense, here's the myrrh, here's what I have to offer, Lord, here's my job, here's my family, whatever those things are, and you're just saying, okay, I'm following after Jesus, the sacrifice is worth it. It's worth it. As these men, they encounter Herod, they're in their meeting room, and Herod's like, hey, when you see him, I want to come worship him, and right, the sacrifice, and they've done all of these things, and then they open up the treasure chest and they give it, and then they have to determine this last one. Ready? It's worth the risk. Last verse, 12. When it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route, for God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. That's the risk. Right? The risk. Because why? I don't know if you heard me. Herod's a nasty individual who kills people just because he wants to sometimes. And the wise men had determined that their encounter with the star maker was worth the risk to go home by another route so that they didn't go back to Herod and report what they had found. It was worth the risk. And there's going to be risk involved. And when you say yes to Jesus, I'm going to tell you, it should be risky. It should be risky. We're comfortable people, right? We drive the Jeep Wagoneer Luxury Edition, Grand Wagoneer Luxury Edition in black with a sunroof, right? Leather interior if we can get it. That'd be awesome. Right? Like that's what we have in life. Like we don't really, like the risk is, your investment in your stock portfolio is like, is the market going to stay where it's at? Like that's what we decide as risk. But what if you decided that you were going to follow Jesus and your life was going to collide with the one who made the stars and called them by name and hung them in the sky and just determined their exact position, and you said, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. Let's follow. Let's get uncomfortable. 2021, let's get uncomfortable in 2022. Let's decide that the journey's worth it, right? Let's decide that the sacrifice is worth it. Let's decide that the risk is worth it. Let's decide that Jesus is worth following and giving our life to. Let's decide that. And let's just put it all on the table, right? We started this year talking about surrender. We've come a long way, but are you willing? Are you willing to just to open up your hands and say, he's worthy. And not only is he worthy, but he's worth it. And we're going to keep talking about this for the next several weeks. So here's my challenge right now. We're going to close. We're going to sing this song. I texted Travis Monday morning. Said, hey man, can we sing this song? You know this song. It's called Is He Worthy? Is he worthy? And here's my challenge. I know what's going to happen because it happens mostly in this service. So I have a challenge for this service in particular. Don't leave. Don't leave. If I could stand back there and block the doors, I will. I know we get up and we all feel like we have places to go. We got to get to the parking lot. Listen, there's not going to be a car wreck without you getting out there, I promise. Children's ministry is going to be okay. Let's just determine in this moment that he's worthy. And let's just declare that together, that he's worthy. And one of the ways that we can do that is just by standing and singing together, to not be in a hurry, to not rush out of here, to not get to what's next, but just to say, we're right here, right now, face to face with Jesus. And we're going to determine in this moment that he's worthy. So let's stand. I'm going to pray. And the team's going to come and we're going to declare together, raising the roof off of this place, that he's worthy. Right? He's worthy. Father, you are amazing. And you've brought us to this place in this moment, 2021. And a lot of us, God, we've got decisions to make in front of us. And the greatest decision in front of us right now is with our life and the expression of our life in this moment as we sing, as we follow, as you lead us, as you guide us, as you direct us. God, are we willing to say Jesus is worthy and Jesus is worth it? For us to say yes, to follow after a star that doesn't make any sense, but we've determined it's his star, and we're going to follow after it and see what you do as we collide with you. So I pray for us, God, as a church, as a people, because some of us need that more than anything in this moment. Because we're struggling with purpose, we're struggling with meaning, we're struggling with fulfillment, there's so many things, and so we need our life in this moment to collide with the only one who's worthy. So God, would you move powerfully in this place, in this moment, as we collectively, as your people, declare that Jesus is worthy. He is worthy to receive all honor and glory and power. And he is worthy for us to lift our voice in song and to lift our hands in worship. He is worthy. He is worthy for us to say yes. He is worthy for us to follow. He is worthy for us to risk everything, to sacrifice everything, and to give our lives. And God, when we do that, oh, would we see you move in power and glory. He's worthy. And it's in his name, the name above every name, that we pray, the name of Jesus. Amen. Let's sing together.